Let's talk about Mzansi because everyone's been asking for it, and I know that they're one of the parties that people are looking forward to voting for.
So I'm going to start with a very brief overview of both the manifesto and the core values. Sungezo Zibi is the founder, head of the party, and the manifesto actually seems really good at the surface, and I'm not exactly against it. When I read it, I was like, hey, my vote would probably go here if it was not for a few other issues, and I'm going to touch on that. So, firstly, the manifesto is very people focused. They do mention that it is not something that they've just come up with through analysis of what's happening in South Africa, but rather they've spoken to individual people and to communities, and they've interacted widely with the South African community to see what individual people and families need. And I think this is great because we do need more in touch politicians, and they're trying to promote that. And then they speak about they focus on better leadership. When they say better leadership, they are very explicit and they're very sure about what they mean by this. So they speak about accountability, and they say that one of the reasons why the South African economy and the South African government is not functioning well is because we lack accountability. They speak about things right down to the point of the blue light brigades, which is you see the entourages of people that are and traveling around with politicians. They want to do away with that, and they want politicians to be more down to earth and interacting with the people. So that, and then they also speak about accountability in terms of the processes that government goes through being visible to the general public, and they speak about the fact that the general public will be able to see what records are occurring within parliament and within the municipality. So there's a lot of transparency that they're asking for, and I think that's a great aspect of it, and I really do hope that we implement it on some level in parliament. Then they speak about the very ambitious goals for economic growth and for prosperity in terms of job opportunities. So they want 6% economic growth every year, and for it to double our GDP to double in the next 12 years and every 12 years in order to keep up with the growing needs of the economy. I think this is great. Our GDP has not increased by much whatsoever. Then they speak about family needs and how they want to focus on everything that a family might need, from the most basic level, which is sanitation, water, electricity, right to things such as kindergarten and daycare and doulas, things like that. So they want to be very focused on the family unit. Then they speak about managing immigration. They are not a pro-immigration party. They do want to restrict borders, and they believe that this can be done through managing the borders in a way where we have skilled labor coming in that can boost our economy, and basically making it a safe and welcoming place for South Africans themselves. Then they speak about being pro BEE, and they want BEE to be enhanced in the tourism industry, and that they would like to enhance tourism in order to bring in revenue. Another way that they aim on bringing in revenue, this is not in the thingy things over here, is that they hope to innovate and create products. So they want to invest a lot into research and development so that we can create cars and technology that can be exported to Western countries and that we can get in foreign revenue. Um, and these all seem really ambitious. It's a very down to earth party, but it also feels like very much a mix of the ANC and the DA, with a lot of DA policies. Then I want to speak about Western imperialism first. So with a lot of their policies, they mentioned speaking to and interacting with the Western government. So, for example, with the innovation of products and selling them and exporting our minerals, exporting our resources, they focus a lot on exporting it to the Western world, as opposed to any of our neighboring African countries. So there's no Pan-Africanism as such that they speak about, and the document is very much for non-racialism. So the aim is to ultimately have a non-racial society through redressing the imbalances of the past. Not exactly a problem to redress imbalances of the past, but it feels very much like a document of and a party where they want change, but they don't want a true change, because true change is extremely radical. And as someone that's voting EFF today, I'm terrified to vote because there's so much at stake with voting EFF. There's so much at stake with voting far left because there's such a drastic change that they speak about happening. Whereas with this party, it seems like very much a not one to rock the boat thing. But we do need to realize that 30 years after democracy, 30 years after we were promised change, we need the boat to be rocked. Okay, then so that's with Western imperialism. They seem to really want to connect with the West. Also, if we look at the funding, they are funded by Rebecca Oppenheimer. And when we think of political parties, don't think of them in isolation of their funders, because their funders are essentially the people that are pulling the strings. They say that they're not pulling the strings, but they are. So when Mzansi was asked for its stance on Palestine and whether or not the genocide was happening there, at that particular debate and event that they were speaking at, they said that they do believe a genocide was occurring. However, this has not been the consistent message that Mzansi has spoken about. In some instances, they've said, for example, in one of the press releases, they said that they don't believe that Palestinians should be living in Bantustans or what it represents Bantustans, and I 100% agree with that. But then they've also proposed a two-state solution, saying that Israelis deserve part of the land, and that we don't agree with. Another thing is that the stance in Palestine, aside from being wishy-washy, they're also part of the Moonshot Pact. They're part of the Multi-Party Charter, and this means that whatever they implement, as much as it might seem good to us, is also something that is going to be in line with DA values, because ultimately the DA-led coalition means that whatever the DA implements, it's mostly going to be DA opinions that are being taken into consideration if this coalition does occur. So I would discourage it based on the DA stance and the fact that these smaller parties connected to the DA would also be very heavily influenced by the DA. It's also important to remember that it's a fairly new party, so we don't actually have any statistics or data to back up anything that any of the claims that they have, or whether it's too ambitious or not ambitious enough. At points, it does feel not ambitious enough, but it does feel like it's very in touch with and they're very down to earth with the general South African population. And I do like that about this party. However, again, we have to consider the fact that they have pro-Zionist roots and they are connected to a pro-Zionist party. And the reason that they have decided to work in coalition with the DA is because they have common values. And one of the DA's main values is something that is very pro-apartheid, very pro-genocide, very pro-occupation of land. Also, if any of you are aware of this, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the funding of Rise Mzansi at the moment, and some funds that were channeled in a way that seemed extremely suspicious. So that's another thing that I think you should go and look into if you are interested in voting for Rise Mzansi. Overall, I think Rise Mzansi's manifesto is great. I don't think that it's going to redress a lot of the issues that are occurring. Also, they do speak about privatization and privatizing Eskom because they believe that Eskom's failure is due to it not being privatized. And then they don't really touch on land reform. They don't really touch on redressing a lot of the issues of the past. So and overall, not a terrible manifesto, not a terrible party in terms of the way that they interact, but I would really say that the reason why we don't feel like it's terrible is because they haven't shown overt signs of pro-Zionism, whereas they are a pro-Zionist party, based solely on their funders and their associates. So I hope that this video helps. I know a lot of people are looking towards voting Rise Mzansi. I would discourage it for those reasons that I just listed, but good luck voting, and may the odds be ever in your favor.